Mr. Boopathy Nalin, good evening. Thank you for
Good
coming
evening.
to my program on alternative spaces for education. And I have invited you because you seem to be the best model, one of the best models that I can show to tell people that there are ways of educating yourself which doesn't follow the conventional paths of getting a degree and going for higher education and so on. Because when I wanted to do this mini series, what I wanted to tell people was that if there is a love of education, there are various ways of getting it. And in my case, basically through reading, whether you get into any program or not. And this program is still not over, this mini series. And I was talking to some friends and I said, can I please have someone who hasn't actually got a degree, but is now considered quite an intellectual who goes, does lectures and does a lot of things in society. And then they said, talk to Boopathy Nalin. And I had, of course, known of you because once we were in one seminar in the University of Sri Jawadhanapura in the science faculty, and I had seen what you had done, and your name comes up in many contexts. And then I called you. We hadn't known each other before, and I asked you whether it's
Yeah.
all right if you come to talk about this particular question, whether education is possible without a degree. And you immediately said yes, that you'd like to come and tell that story. Because through my channel, Boopathy, I hope to bring some stories out so that others can hear of the alternatives possible, that others can hear and be inspired by listening to other people who have done not conventional things, right? And thank you for
Yeah.
coming. And can I ask you to start our
Thank you for
discussion?
inviting.
Sure. Start a discussion by telling the people who actually you are and what you do. That will be a good introduction to go back into how you came to be here. Exactly what do you do, Boopathy?
Yeah. Thank you again for inviting me. And it is something impossible to answer. Who am I? I think basically because, but let's go in a usual narration. I'm in profession. I don't work anywhere. I mean, particularly as a 8 to 5 something. But basically, I'm doing teaching. I'm a visiting lecturer for several universities. I mean, basically, if you named mostly with Sri Pali University, Sri Pali campus of Colombo University and Kelaniya University and Foundation Institute, Film Institute, I mean Film School of Foundation Institute, and several other photography. And basically, I'm teaching mostly with visual arts, related to visual arts and aesthetic theory. Beside that, I am a kind of a political activist in leftist sense, and at the same time, I do work as a screenwriter. I have done only one a single film called Dekala, kenek, and because in Sri Lanka, film industry is something impossible. You cannot make so many films in your lifetime, especially nowadays. So that's all for now. I mean, basically. Yeah.
Right. So to come to a state where you teach mainly in tertiary educational institute, for example, universities, right? To come to such a place where we learn from you, what is the path that made you come to this level, Boopathy? Because you do not have a degree, you're not ashamed to say that, you very openly say, I don't have a degree, right? What is the
Yeah.
path that made someone become a teacher to others when you yourself did a very unconventional way of getting there? Can you tell where this started, Boopathy? You can tell me from childhood, that's fine. From where did this journey begin?
Yeah, I think it's mostly started with when I was in Ashoka College, doing my early studies. We met someone called Ganshanuka Vidhanapatirana. He's a student. He was a student at that time. He was doing his A levels, and he started kind of I mean unofficial classroom to study Buddhism seriously. mostly Abhidharma, but Sutra Pitaka also started with the Sutra Pitaka, and then later on went on to little serious Abhidharma parts, likewise Sangyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, those things. And it made me very curious because basically I felt onto that because of in 1996 I lost my father. He passed away, and I was so curious about what happening to the soul, or what happened to the human consciousness after the death. That was very serious, and I'm not saying in a very sentimental or kind of very not in usual way, but I was interested about it in a very serious manner, not in a personal, but basically what happens to a human beings and what kind of a thing, but having inside of us consciousness. Those words are, I mean, contemporary, but at that time I'm not that sure about what I'm searching about.
I'm just amazed, if I may interrupt you, that at a school student, you said it's a senior student, would even think about having Abhidhamma discussions with his friends, right? There was no teacher involved here.
No, nothing. No, none of.
So where did you all meet? When did you all meet? How did that happen?
Yeah, it happened. I mean, basically, it started with very unofficial way, like I mean, kind of with corridors and like that. So then later on, he asked us. There were several famous guys also. I can remember that one of junior student. He's now very famous. Who wrote Rambari song Rambari. Manuranga Vijayasekara was there at that class, and he invited us in a very friendly way. If you are like, and if you are interested about this subject, you can be in the class. There were different, I mean, age groups, A-level students. I was at, I mean, grade 8 or something. So different, I mean, objectives. Myself, it's kind of personal and kind of interested on much into Buddhist philosophy, and some others are much into ritual things. So different kind of objectives and different intentions. But anyway, we sat on a classroom together, and Gan was the teacher. He taught us in a very, I mean, very neat, very sensitive and very attractive way, very practical way.
You actually had a classroom for this officially?
Yeah, actually, at his classroom. He was a student at biology.
Where did he find the time to circumvent the normal class times? Like when did you all meet?
Made some dedication. I mean, if you want to study this, we have to make a dedication, and we discussed, and we started it around early. I mean, 6 or 6:30 in the morning.
Oh, before the school started. Before the school started.
Yeah. So we have nearly 1 hour to 1.5 hours. That was fair enough. So I took the early train. I was living in Maharagam at that time. And unofficial, actually my family doesn't know that what I'm doing at that much of early, but they were quite okay to go early. They were much happy about that. Later on, some of the parents, they got to know what we are doing and what we are involved in. So some of them are not so happy about that, because they might thought we might become priests, and most of us were vegetarian, and we took it very seriously. I emphasize this because of Madhubhashini. Later on, when I understand, or when I read this retroactively, I understood that if you are interested about, something about philosophical law, something about consciousness, so something beyond material things, we have mass true traditions in Sri Lanka, I guess, at least in Sri Lanka. I don't know much about the other countries. In Sri Lanka, we have major two traditions, mass traditions, I guess. One is the Buddhist philosophy, and the other is Marxist philosophy. There can be levels. If you take the quality of the discussion, or the productivity of the discussion, there can be critiques. But we have these two paths at least. And I started with this Buddhist thing. But I have never taken what you call I'm not much interested about the ritual practice. I was much interested about the philosophical aspect of the Buddhist teaching.
It's very interesting, because you say most of us, I think the Buddhist people, when we are born, we are heirs to two traditions. One is religion. We grow up with that. We pansil, and we realize what we are. Yeah, and also the leftist tradition is very, very strong, especially if you're in a particular social milieu, you can't escape it. So that's very interesting. And this is something even in Sinhala, this amazed me that, grade 8 people and a bunch of young students discussing Abhidhamma in the
classroom.
classroom. It's such a picture in my head. Were there no teachers curious about what is happening? Were there no protests? Did they try to interfere? Did they at least ask what you all were talking about? What kind of freedom was there?
Actually, at the early sessions, there aren't any, restrictions or any disturbances. But later on, at the parents' meetings, some of the parents have complained that our children have become vegetarians and blah, blah, blah. So our practices, and we did some Vidarshana Bhavana sessions and those things. And very seriously, we took it very seriously. And I was practicing Satipatthana also very seriously. So at the moment, after I did my A-levels, I'm not religious. I'm much into, obviously, I'm into Marxism. And at the moment, I'm not a religious person. But I honestly believe that this practice, taught me kind of a very serious way that you can have something for you in a very genuine way. Not to make certificates or not the typical stereotype method of education in Sri Lanka. And honestly, we are not in a passionate way. Once you go to school, it's a headache. And we will do it because our parents and all the people are asking to do it. That's why we are doing it. But honestly, when you comes to this particular Buddhist class, it was totally different, and we were so passionate about it, and we were very authentically engaged with that practice. And nobody.
What you read? Did you read it in Pali or Sinhala? What was the material that you discussed, Boopathy, at that age? What language?
Gayanvaya was able to read it in Pali. He was a very good reader. He was mostly rather than many monks and many Buddhist priests, he was a very serious. He is a very serious guy. Still, he is a serious guy about these things. But now I have a very serious critique on him about his nationalistic and racist approaches about Sri Lankan Sinhala Buddhist culture. He is a very famous guy in YouTube, and you can search and go to his video and famous TV channel. But earlier, those days, I didn't find anything racist or anything, some kind of negative thing with him. So he was very serious about Buddhist philosophy, and later on he introduced us to several serious Buddhist monks. I got attracted to Madavalu Upalithero, who was practicing at Kanduboda Bhavana Madhyasthana at Delgoda. At that time, I was going there, and I was practicing some kind of Buddhist practices, and we had many, unofficial discussions with Upalithero. He was a very friendly person and very creative, and he had some kind of a chemistry degree or something. So he's very scientific and he was very logical, and they kind of introduced us Buddhism in a very not in a traditional way, very creative and very practical way. So this is my I believe is my beginning of kind of a different practice, different education, reading in a passionate way. Then only I was.
So grade 8. How long did that last, Boopathy? This kind of discussion started in grade 8, and then in Ashoka till how long did you continue that?
I think it went around 2 to 3 years from my side.
Right.
I think they had it even after, but I quit due to my personal reasons. Then after my O-levels, I went to study photography from Miss Lal Hagoda. I have said this in many interviews.
Same school?
After
O-level, were you in the same school?
No, after the O-levels, I went to Ananda College.
Ananda, okay.
Just, neighboring school, in Maradana. So during that intermediate period, just after the O-levels, I went to private class of Lal Hagoda's photography class. So there, I was, into many various kind of subjects like poetry, cinema, and literature, many things. So he was a very he is a very interesting teacher, and he was a very influential teacher. And that made me much secular, I think. It kind of pushed me into a very secular of studying human subject, basically, in a very kind of a romantic way.
So that you kind of gave up the Buddhist philosophical spiritual learning to come into a very secular materialistic medium of photography.
Yeah.
Right. So were you doing photography
if
while you were
remember,
doing
I
A
guess,
levels? Sorry, go ahead, Boopathy. I'm sorry I interrupted you. You go ahead.
Yeah, that obviously that should happen to me, because if you can remember, there was a huge debate in Lagbima newspaper about the Buddhist practice between Mr. Lal Hagoda and Somatera, if you remember.
I
went on
didn't
for
follow
weeks,
that.
and
Yes.
it became really controversial in Sri Lanka. I think still it's one of most controversial, Buddhist argument went through in a public space. So with that influence also, I get much into Lal Hagoda's secular way of introducing the human subject. I mean, what we can do with it, what we are living for, and how we should understand the society around us. So that's how I went to.
Yeah. Were you doing photography parallel to your A-level studies, or was it after? Now you were in your A-level classes.
No,
were you doing this parallel to that, together at the same time?
Yeah.
So didn't that disturb your A-level studies? Were you ever thinking seriously about your A-levels in school?
No, I don't think that you can use the word disturb, but I totally gave up A-levels actually. I was not doing A-levels.
Right.
I'm totally into photography, and I'm
Yeah.
totally into cinema. I started going for each and every film discussions, film screenings, mostly at places like Alliance Francaise and Goethe Institute, American Center. I was introduced to all these alternative spaces like Vibavi and many more places which screen alternative film screenings. And there were a very valuable video parlors at that time, private video parlors like Precious International at Tumula Junction, and Video International at Kollupitiya. Those DVD parlors, they had very interesting video racks with total collections of cinema of Bergman, Hitchcock, Tarkovsky, all the serious directors were there. So I felt into this kind of art world. And at the same time, I must emphasize that when it comes to photography and cinema, again, Madhubhashini, you don't have much materials in Sinhala. There are people like Sissa Besekara, Sunil Mihindukula, Regis Srivardhana, P.L. Somaratna. They have written extensively into things like Cinesit, Chitrapata magazine, and there are many magazines in Sinhala. But once you come to up to some level of this study, you're gonna stuck at a certain level because you don't have enough materials in Sinhala language, especially when you comes to photography and cinema.
Okay.
Even
so
today also.
Is your love for cinema, and obviously you speak about it with great passion, did that start with your photography, that kind of advent? Did photography pave the way for your love for cinema? How did that come about?
Kind of. I can't. I can't say that it happened because of photography class, but because if you there were films screened in Swarnavahini at that time, especially at Saturday at 2 o'clock. There were psychological thrillers. So it made me to understand, especially my adulthood. I mean, basically sexuality and our love life, those things. We don't discuss those things in usually in Sri Lankan middle class family. And when you once you come to our friends or this kind of gatherings, you don't have you rarely find kind of gossips or kind of talks to understand these kind of things in a very serious manner. But cinema did help me to create my kind of my own world to understand each and every chapters of our lives, my childhood, my teenage life, my sexuality, and my family in an alternative way, which you cannot find in ordinary society in Sri Lanka. So it sparked me in a sense. And then I received the language or the form to understand this by photography class with the visual literacy. I mean, visual language. Lal Hagoda was discussing about about Kama Sutra. He was encouraging us to watch Kama Sutra at Rio cinema. I was not, in an age to watch there. I was under 18, but he said, you should go there. It's not obscene. It was a very creative film. You just go through the photography, go through the editing, see the way they have developed the erotics in a cinematic way, how they create the nudity. So he taught us all these things. So it was really impressive, and he was a kind of a very revolutionary teacher in our life, a very rare scene to meet in Sri Lanka.
Yeah,
so,
I need to ask you something connecting it, what you're saying to now. Now, obviously, you had many spaces to watch really good quality films, right? Do young people who, like you chose your path and you followed it, kind of a let everything else go fly kind of thing. Would someone now in 2022, okay, forget the pandemic, even if it hadn't struck, would the spacers to give them this content still be available, Boopathy? Forget the pandemic. This is a very odd scenario, but is the Goethe, Allianz, and whatever now, obviously the parlors don't even exist anymore because we have Netflix and the YouTube. How has the opportunities changed now? What do you think?
No, they still do. They still do. As an example, Madhubhashini, just before the corona, I went for a screening at American Center. That film was called Elephant Corridor or something, which shot in Sri Lanka in 1950s. A film was introduced by a veteran filmmaker, Chandran Ratna. He was linking it to the tourism at that period and how that Hollywood film came to in Sri Lanka and how they developed the script and all these things. So if you study cinema, there are places which you can go, without spending any money. It's fully free of charge. So there are places and there are very valuable film discussions. Even just 2 weeks ago, there was a very interesting film discussion about the latest film by Ashok Handagama, Albaroda, at National Film Corporation, with full house audience during the pandemic. So I think, personally, I think Sri Lankan film, not only film, if you take literature or if you take painting, Sri Lankan artistic discourse is very rich, I guess, very rich. But the thing is, it's mostly Colombo-centered, mostly highly Colombo-centered. And even though if it is Colombo-centered, some of the people, don't get this, information. I don't know why, somehow, especially now. Though it is available online, there are many websites, there are many posts, there are many pages. I see a kind of, as you asked, a kind of, lack of teenage and lack of younger audience at the screen, at these screenings.
Is it because so many things are easily available for them now?
Yeah,
With the
and
TikToks
now
and the
I think
whatnot.
even a generation, earlier generations, they understood cinema as a collective medium, especially cinema. Unlike literature, even you are watching a cinema with a whole bunch of crowd, like literature. When you comes to reading a novel or poetry, you do it on your bed or in very personal way. As Lenin said, cinema is the most social and most, most political art of the modern age. It is the most political art, most influential art. But once you come to the millennium, and especially in the second decade of the millennium, I think this, virtue or this quality of cinema has vanished, sadly, with Netflix and Amazon Prime or something. Cinema has become very personalized and cinema has become very individualistic. And it is kind of individual.
Basically entertainment only, right? I'm guilty of
Mostly,
that.
mostly.
Absolutely, yes. So that you're just doing it for
No, that's totally
entertainment
okay.
as well.
I'm not someone against. Yeah, I'm not someone against Hollywood. I'm a big Hollywood fan with Marvel and everything. I'm a huge Batman fan, and so that's okay. But once you, in each and every country, if you consider the serious cinema, it's a smaller audience. It's a kind of a small audience, festival based or something. But the thing is, this audience is getting narrow and narrow. I don't know why. And there are people, there are audiences, but if you, observe carefully, the audience is unlike 90s. audience is full of not much younger people, as you say. There are youngsters, but mostly with age of our people or someone elder than us,
And I was thinking,
who have been
Boopathy,
addicted to cinema.
right, and you had people like Tissa Besekara, people before you who were there as models, so that you actually could watch them, and that's another very good case of alternative education, who really knew
Yes.
what they were doing. So you grew up looking up at them. And I was thinking, if there is no younger people actually looking up at, the people who are involved in serious cinema, wonder what will happen to that in the future, no? When there are no more people to look up to, So whether...
Yeah, especially now, if you consider now contemporary condition, I mean the condition today, there are so many institutes, Madhubhashini. Several universities, they are running film courses like Sri Pali, Foreign University, even Pera. There are very good film teachers, very veteran film teachers. But in 2000, once we were interested about cinema, there were no schools at all, no institutes, even
So
paid
how
institutions.
did you learn? How did you pursue your education?
Yeah, there are the courses. I mean, not much longer running, like 6 months or 9 months. Not unlike that. There were shorter film courses. Like Tissa Besekara, I remember Tissa Besekara organized some of the courses as 1 week course of French cinema, French New Wave, 2 weeks course of German Expressionism, like that.
I see.
With some kind of a companion with Goethe Institute too, early on. So some kind of a presentation. So Tissa Besekara was my teacher, official teacher. I was in his classrooms. There were so many. He has so many students. Now they are very senior filmmakers. But even if you consider this, as you know, he is not someone who coming from a typical academic background. He doesn't have a degree, or he doesn't have a, proper academic qualification or something. But he was a very veteran, bilingual. If you consider his English literature, he was very rich. And if you take his Sinhala, my goodness, very rich and very fluent and very creative.
One of the very few people who is like bringing Tony home, was exquisitely crafted and written.
Yes.
And the same with Sinhala.
Yeah.
So one of the very few who were absolutely super in both Sinhala and English creative writing.
Exactly. Intellectual in a real sense. So even after that, I was engaged with X Group, which is a cultural political group. Most of people might know. And I was so attracted to Deepthi Kumara Gunaratna. And again, Deepthi was an academic. He's the one who introduced, and he's the one who, make an interest for people like us, which is non-academic, to study things very seriously, to take, politics and social cultural studies very seriously. Most of the, when it comes to artists in Sri Lanka, they don't study even their sector in a very serious manner. They don't know the history properly. They don't know the aesthetic theory properly. They are scratching things and just so they, just the surface. So they emphasized us not to do that kind of a practice and take it very seriously. If you come to art history, you have to study it very properly. So these things influenced that. As an example, even I went to a very, centralized colleges in Colombo. I was not much fluent. Still I'm not much fluent in English. I have grammar issues and everything at the moment also. I'm struggling with it. I'm not much comfortable in English as much as I do in Sinhala. But they pushed us to read very serious English books, right? Like Routledge publications to, very serious publications in a very serious and a very disciplinary manner, in a very disciplinary way. So I think these figures, these ideas, who have influenced us a lot, and they gave us some kind of courage, as a courage that you can do that even without academia. I'm not insulting you. I'm not discouraging anyone.
No, and I think
academy.
Exactly. And as an academic who is in the university, I teach English as a second language. I should also say, your way, I mean, as much as I admire it, it'll work for somebody with your passion. Boopathy, you know, you follow things, you had the luck also to actually be in touch with people who could influence you. And that's not the normal scenario, right? For example, your batchmate was Malit Hagoda, who said, come, my father can teach you photography. I mean, that is just luck and privilege, right? And also your exposure to, the fact that you're in Colombo and that somehow you got into these groups. You must have had friends who went to films with you. So those are lucky, in a way, lucky chances, right? Which is not common maybe to everybody. So I would say, as a conventional teacher, I would say if you get a chance to come into an institution, please do so. Because your method works if the similar passion is there, and maybe you're lucky enough to have those contacts as well. So I would say,
and the conditions.
So if you can pass A levels, please do. I mean, but if it's killingly boring, at least have a passion. You chose your road and you walked it. Now that you're very lucky also in the fact that your parents allowed that to happen. Because I mean, I've interviewed doctors sometimes who are like in the medical school, and he says, I said, like, what made you choose the profession? The sentence was, my mother wanted me to be a doctor. I've heard that, Boopathy. You know, it's in the Sri Lankan context, it's not easy like you to follow what you want. I mean, that's the way life is. Yes. But as much as I admire it, like a conventional teacher who is in academia, I must tell people, if you can go the conventional way, it's probably easier. But also, I want to tell you this, Boopathy. I also know that you can go the conventional way and not learn much. You can easily get certificates. But learning is, you know, you do that anyway, whether you're inside or outside. But when you're outside, you don't get the certificate. So if you can come in and do both, get the certificate and also open your mind like you did to other ways of learning, go find it, read books with difficulty, that will be ideal. If I were to choose something, be in an institution that will give you a certificate, because if you want a job, Boopathy, I'm pretty sure like young people here would like to get a job, get married, have kids, somehow find a way of feeding them. Then these certificates come in handy. So let's not just say, push that back, because that is, you know, I'll be very responsible if I don't make this comment. Yes, but
I'm unmarried and I don't have children, so I can manage this.
Exactly. So I'll be responsible if I don't put that caution also. If you get a chance to be in an institution, you can pass through an institution without actually getting really a good education. You can, because you can memorize and pass exams. Open that door. Because if you're lucky enough to really learn something, change as a person and get the certificate, that will be the idea. Right? I wanted to ask you, in your Sinhala interview, you said two things changed your life particularly. One was Asoka Handagama's Me Mage Sandai. And you said that night you knew film was going to make a difference to you, right? What was that? What happened there?
It was a wonderful experience, but once it was happening, it was not that wonderful, because it was kind of a very shock to me. I've been I've been introduced to European cinema at that time, mostly European art house cinema. So I was watching Europe, as I said earlier, I was watching European art house cinema non-stop. But once I saw this film, I exactly remember the date also. It was in 10th of August in 2001. Was premiere. I still have ticket also with me. But this made me kind of shocked, and I was, I mean, exposed to kind of a country that I didn't know until then. I didn't know that country. I mean, I was Colombo centered and I was living here and I know all the urban things. And I was not much interested about war or, I mean, this no man's land area. So this marginalized, villages. So I have no idea about these things. I'm not a much more political person. My family is very political. They are all having kind of a leftist history. My father was a member of Samaja Party. My grandfathers were members of, they are the organizers. But I was never influenced politically by my family. But once I watched this film, and I got shocked. And then my good friend at that time, Mangisa Sumanasekara, he was my classmate. and he is still very much involved in Western philosophy and those things. I mean, still he is active. So he asked me to come for a very typical Sri Lankan public seminar, very common Sri Lankan public seminar, which I mean, discuss about this film. The speakers were Vimal Viransa, he was at JVP at time, and Deepthi Kumar Gunratna from X Group, and Rohashna Abardana from Hiru Group. I am also a very famous political group, which was fraction by the JVP. So Deepsi's speech took my heart, and I was so attracted, and so I mean, it was so attractive. So I have never heard such things on life, politics, society, and cinema. So obviously, I mean, I became a kind of a fan of it, and I started reading very fast all these magazines, London magazines, magazines, and at that time there were only 2 books were published by X Group. The first book was Prithvikarya Hegemony and Navasarupa, and the other book was published by Sarath Vijayasuriya Grantha Kendra, Sanskritya Sapradhana Deshapalne. I bought these books and I read them, I mean, kind of a addicted way. And I kind of got into a very vast range of subjects, like from Michel Foucault, Derrida, psychoanalysis, postmodernism, and so many things.
And you read these in what language, Boopathy? You read this now at first you said Sinhala,
at that time, yeah, at that time I read only in Sinhala, and once I was, I mean, once I there are 2 main reasons which make me some kind of effect on studying English. The 2 main reasons are cinema and politics. Because of, I mean, at first when I was watching those European films, definitely I have to capture the exact meanings and the, I mean, nuances of English subtitles, and I have to read those things in the internet or some other books in English. So obviously I have to do that. So I just started reading. I have done elocution courses and all these things when I was in grade 6 or 7, but actually, honestly, those things, those courses didn't influence me much, honestly. I did because my family asked me to do so, like most of the children does. So after my A levels, I really felt that I should learn English very seriously, and there aren't any other path because I have to do it. So because of cinema and X Group only, I was interested about political. So I lose that fear of English because X Group was discussing about. I was exposed to SSA also. Gannatha Obesekara's writings, Jayadev Yangoda, Newton Gunasinghe. Those people were talking about the politics of language, post-colonial unconscious, Frederick Jameson's theory, all these things on language and language politics, and how we have kind of a real unconscious about, I mean, as an example, we don't
when
feel shy or...
Yeah, Boopathy, when Gananatha and them spoke, they spoke in English, right?
Yeah, even Jayadev, Kumari Jayavardhan.
So yeah, so but you went and listened and you understood more or less.
Yeah, I was struggling, but I did my best. Yeah, I tried my best.
Because every time I try to say that and signal that out, it's through use, it's through actual immersion, it's through making use of the language to access something that you love, that you can easily get it without thinking of learning separately. Definitely. And your story when Kaushal Singh, he said, his first essays were literary theory, which I still struggle to understand. They're so difficult, even in English. They are translated most of the time. So I find that fascinating that there's a group of young people whose advent into the language was through the most difficult style of writing in English, simply because you loved what they said. And that is such a good message to send others who might think, we don't have a way to read them when they're difficult. When you show that's exactly what you read to learn, not to learn, that you read it because you wanted to know the content. So, okay, so SSA was also very...
Likewise, yeah. And Madhubhashini, likewise, you mentioned while we were doing the Sinhala interview, actually, I didn't get the each and every word or each and every phrase at first reading. So I missed many things. Some words were very, very hard. And even though sometimes you cannot find it in an ordinary dictionary or in Oxford dictionary, there were, if you take, as an example, if you take the word discourse, in a structuralist sense, it made another meaning. If it comes to post-structuralist sense, it make another different meaning. So likewise, they have a very, serious nuances. So writings of Deepthi or Jaydev Yangoda or Nirmal Ranjit or Rohan Pereira, these singular writings helped us a lot to, to make us our own narration of study, how to do this. And they did guide us. At X Group, we had classes, we have many discussions. They were very friendly and they were very, moving. So they did guide us in a very, very friendly and very political manner. So people who were interested like me, not each and every guy from the X Group, but some of the people were very, very serious. Youngsters were very serious about what they were reading. So I decided to, study each and every subject in a very chronological and a very serious manner. So I started with Freud.
Yeah, as an English teacher, as an English teacher, I also want to point this out. When you read a difficult thing, you said you just read it. You jumped over difficult words and just completed it. Because the general context would make you guess what the meaning is. And this is, this is a textbook way of actually doing something. You don't stop at every difficult word. You read the whole thing, try to get a general idea, and then if you have the time, you come and read it again. And in the Sinhala, you said you just did that. You read the whole article, waited a few days thinking about it, then came back. Then you might have gone into each word. That process is a classic way of how reading can be done, not to get scared.
And definitely there can be misreadings at the first reading. So you can go through the secondary texts. There are many, introductory books. If you, as an example, if you take 3 essays on sexuality by Freud, you might not get the whole idea or the whole context at your first reading. But after you have done one reading, there are many introductory texts about secondary texts about these things. So later on, after 2005 or 6, there were many materials were available online. So I was able to download the PDF and online, pirate or something. Dictionaries specified to special subjects, Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy, Penguin Dictionary of Architecture, Penguin Dictionary of, likewise, Lacanian Psychoanalysis Dictionary. So we were open to this kind of academic study, but in an non-academic way.
Right. And I think in the Sinhala, you showed one of the books. Boopathy, do you still have it near you? You showed the Routledge Companion to Heidegger, I think.
I have several. I have several books of this series. As an example, at the moment, I'm struggling to get into Heidegger's philosophy. So I'm following this book, Routledge, Critical Thinkers, Essential Guides of Literary Studies. So this book was not by Heidegger. This is an introductory book for Heidegger. So I all these books were available online. The whole, introduction to Zizek, introduction to Freud, introduction to Che, so many books. So I still struggle and I still fight with myself to get into a philosopher, struggling with, as you know, each and every philosopher has his own way of using language, his own way of style. Freud having a very specific style of his own writings. Lacan is so different from him. Likewise in Sinhala writers. Gunza Samarasekara was rather different from Nalin da Silva, though they are, both of them are representing the nationalistic bank. At the same time, if you take, even though Deepthi Kumar Gunratna and Nirmal Ranjit Devasiri were both in X Group, their styles were totally different. If you take Kumar Jayavardhan or Jayadev Yangoda, that's what, that's the, potential of your potential of language. You can, insert your subject into a language. That's what make you unique. That's what makes you a unique writer. So once you are struggling with this kind of writings, in a way you can enjoy it. It's not only an intellectual journey, but you can enjoy the language. So all these kind of things are in this kind of introductory book. But the thing is, you have to, I mean, as you mentioned several times, you have to be really passionate about this. And it must be a desire. What Deepthi once advised me, I really love that advice. He said, in Sri Lanka, we spend most of our earnings to eat and dress for, I mean, for clothes and for foods. But he said, don't ever think twice to spend to gather the culture, to get the culture or get the knowledge. So I mean, at the moment also, I'm spending 80% of my earnings to buy books. I don't have any
Can I
savings.
just say,
Yeah.
luckily you're not married and you don't have kids, Boopathy. I'm just saying it as a mother who's struggling to survive. No, but
Yeah.
as you say, now the internet has so much to give if you know where to look, because most
Yeah.
of these books are available online. Okay, some maybe not officially free, but there are ways of getting it, which I can't, announce here. But being a poor country and books being extremely
But
expensive right now.
especially after Corona pandemic, most of the libraries have been open to, I mean, in a very
Exactly. Yes.
yeah.
So that, these, even if it's not the Routledge Companion to something, you can get handbooks available free on the internet. But,
Exactly.
with the passion, if you have the desire to work, to put in the hard work, this kind of knowledge is accessible. And I
Yeah.
like my discussion with Praveen, who spoke about polity, said you shouldn't have a you shouldn't revere these theories as being like, way up there. You should engage with them. That is always
Definitely.
healthier, not to have
Exactly.
a sadhu kind of
Kind of a
admiration
gap.
to them.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to not revere some of them and still
Yeah.
engage with them, try to understand them, what they're saying in our context.
And
So
make it
that
yours. And make it yours.
that kind of engagement is possible even without full knowledge of English, because the internet gives access to that. And then, you need to know where to look, because like I just finished my PhD, most of my reading happened online because the books were there.
Yeah.
So and then of course being in university, it helps, all the gesture and everything. The university pays and you have access to that. So in
Luckily.
that sense, being in the academic world helps a little bit.
Definitely.
Bhupati,
I agree.
especially with the library facilities. You have
Yeah.
access to almost every library in the world, because you can get interloans and all that. But my admiration to you, who have, in the Sinhala one, you said because there was no academic secondary reading, you actually went to the original sources of knowledge and found their books, right? What was that story, Pupati, where you went and found the original source of the knowledge and talked to him and got his knowledge in
Sorry, I
photography
didn't
and all
get you.
that?
I didn't get
You
you.
said when you started photography, there was nothing much to read. So
Yeah.
you went and met the real people who were the producers
Yes.
of knowledge and spoke
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah. As an example, as I told you, Mr. Sikotala, unfortunately, is not with today. Now, so I'm working with good team.
Bhupati, you're getting very cut off. Can you start that again? Your
Yeah.
speaker,
Can you hear
your
me?
mic.
Can you hear me please now?
Yeah, better. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to tell you was that at that time there were very, I mean, in a little number of photography books in at that time was not much capable to read things in English. So there are books in council, the library. I was much interested about. I was at my O levels, so I went. Sometimes I went to, I mean, meet the even Sevanakothalawala's book was not available in usual bookshops. So I went to Kalaniya. He was living in Kalaniya, and I met him and I interviewed him for a magazine, and I asked him to, can I have your book also? So I still do that, Madhubhashini. As an example, I saw that Sasanka Perra has written a wonderful book on photography as Fear of the Visual. I think you have the copy. So I saw it in internet and I tried to find it in local bookstores. It was not available. So I went to Sasanka, met him, and I discussed with him. Luckily, he gifted me the book. So likewise, I still do that. Once I really hard to find the original copy, I have that passion. Most recently, I was so lucky enough to, I was so much into architecture for now 8 to 7 years. So I study, as a self study. I'm not an architect. I'm not a professional. I don't have any qualification. But I was looking a book called My Contribution to Architecture by Panitennakon. He was a very pioneer architect at the period of welfare state in Sri Lanka. So I was looking for this book. It's not available even in Amazon or anywhere. But a few weeks ago at Mardana, DR Vijayavardhana Mawatha bargain book sales, I managed to find this book. I was there for 2 hours, 2 long hours. So I was asking different books about them, books from them about Marxist, about photography, and they were very curious. Usually, one person might say a single subject. I'm looking for literature. I'm looking for. Once they ask what kind of a book you are looking for, I'm going to make him a list of subjects. So they were very helpful, and they gave me the. I was so happy. So I still, as you said, I'm still kind of a thirst. A kind of inside thirst to find these original materials to read, and if it is, especially if it is not available in online or something. So I
But
think it has by
I'm
your
going to
heart.
ask, yes, I'm going to ask you a question, like with the ex-Kandayam or with the ex-group and all that, there
Yeah.
were groups that dealt with intellectual subject matter, or forget intellectual, things that
Yeah.
interested you, right? What is the situation now, Boopathy? Are there young people who come, are there groups like that who gather to discuss some academic subject? What is the condition now? Because I'm very much within the campus field, right? What is happening outside? Is there a particular interest? Do young people gather to talk about philosophy like this? What is the situation? What do you think?
Yes, as I see Madhubhashini, I think uh, it has been, narrowed in a sense. If you take the X group, it was a very influential group, not only based in Colombo. There were branches in Kandy, in Gaul, in Nigambo. We had several branches and very active. We made discussions, arguments. We made regional books for that kind of areas, especially, specialized for that particular areas. So likewise, unfortunately, we are not having that kind of an influential study or alternative political groups at the moment. At that time, there were several, like as I told you, Hirukandayama, Ex-Kandayama, and even cultural artistic groups like OCIC, Vibavi, those things, Wafa, those things were so activated. But now, somehow, due to many complex reasons, this alternative discourse has been narrowed into a very, small scale of people, small group of people. Still, there are study groups. I think the Deepthi also running something, not in that scale, not in X group scale, but in a smaller scale. But Rohan Pereira, I heard Rohan Pereira also still running something. Even I myself running several groups, study groups. Vangisa Sumanasekara does, and there are. But all these groups are limited to 10 to 15 people. At that period, when while we at the X group was active, we had nearly 300 to 400, kind of full timers in X group who were really dedicated to this thing, and they got paid. Not as a salary, but they were maintained, and they were, they were into this thing full time. So it was very different compared to the scenario nowadays. Unfortunately, we are not having this. I think that's due to many complex reasons. Individualism has been, spread over like a cancer all over the society, and there are many sources people can reach. As I told you, people don't take a kind of even art like cinema. They don't take it as a, collective art. They take, some kind of, small cinema in their house, all the Dolby EX sound and everything inside the house, home cinema, and they watch everything individually with a family or 2 or 3 persons. But we, at that time, we went to a Goethe Institute, we went to WAFA, we went to VV, and after the film, we were discussing, we were arguing, and maybe film runs over 2 hours, and our discussion might run over 4 hours. at Mardana, I mean, nearby the railway station or BMICH bus halt or somewhere else. So this discursive practice might have been, I can't tell you exactly, but I see as a person, I still, I mean, I'm still, I'm a kind of kind of a
Vagabond.
yeah, exactly. So so I feel that difference at the moment also. I feel that difference, that impact, and that effective discourse has been vanished from the society, unfortunately. But we are trying at our best. I mean, not only me, there are a lot of people who trying at our best to recreate it, but maybe we are trying it in an old fashion. Maybe
Yeah, because
things
I
might
think the
change.
world
Yeah,
has changed, no, with all the
definitely.
social media becoming very powerful, and maybe young people having their companionship
Yeah.
probably through WhatsApp groups now than physical meetings. So I think the world
Yeah,
has
no,
changed,
sorry.
Bhupati. Yes.
Not playing my own trumpet. Don't
Mm,
mistreat me well,
mm,
please.
mm.
I had a wonderful experience during the corona. At the first corona break, filmmaker King Ratnam asked me and colleagues. He asked me to join to a journey to Jaffna with them and make a kind of a workshop with art young art lovers at Jaffna. Once I got there, at the very first meeting, a young guy came to me and he asked me I mean, he cannot speak Sinhala. He asked me that, are you Boopathy? Believe me, in Jaffna. I was surprised and I said, yes. And how did you know me? He said, I have seen you everything in YouTube and these things. I'm not a famous guy or I'm not a pop star, but I was so happy. And earlier, 5 or 6 years ago, this might not happen. People like me, we were only known by a very small group of a gang in Colombo, kind of a cult actually. But now with Zoom and with YouTube and everything, there are a lot of people all around the country who were exposed to our discourse. Not only myself, each and every alternative, personalities. So this is, as you mentioned, this is something new. We have broken the borders with this new medias. So it's something really beautiful, and we might think over that kind of a study circles. I mean, physical study circles. I mean, world has been changed, so should practice some new methods. I mean, in a very different way. So I don't have any dystopian. Kind
Correct.
of idea
Because
about the
there
future.
might be people gathering in a different platform, like
Yeah,
maybe the cyberspace. And then let's keep hoping, Bhupati, that
definitely.
this kind of discussion where, critical awareness is built and you look at life differently is also cultivated. Because
Yeah,
even what I'm trying to do with this channel, and I'm very grateful people like you come and speak, is that YouTube is not normally connected to discussions that are kind of this serious. So this is not very serious, but this goes on for a long time. So I'm glad we don't have to have thousands of people watching, but
yeah.
it's our responsibility to put it out there, and those who want to see can, if they wish to. So maybe
Not
the
the
media,
quantity, but the quality. Yeah, not the
maybe,
quantity, but the quality.
hopefully, that's the thing. And you never know. There might be people watching and they might speak of it. A little idea can go a long way. And when people like you come and speak, and your case, you showed that no, you can be unconventional and still come to a state where you can actually go and lecture in universities. And that
Yeah,
is possible because visiting lecturers can, in fact, be taken
yeah,
on experience, right? There's a loophole there.
yeah. It's a huge opportunity. Yeah, for both of us, for teachers and students also. Yeah,
Yes, so in particular cases where your experience is taken as being equivalent to a degree and you showed right from maybe school years that
exactly.
you can pursue knowledge if you have the love for it.
Yeah,
So, Bhupati, thank you. Like in summary, what I want to tell is by having someone like you, I mean, obviously you go in search of things with a passion, like a hunger, which has not died yet. So if anyone has that, they are they are very lucky because that will drive them towards finding out, doing things for themselves. And campus is such that only a very few people can get in. So I hope with my Atharamadhyava channel, just to put the message, you don't have to come to campus. Please do if you get the chance. But even if you don't, knowledge is out there. Hopefully, be educated so that you can serve wherever you're serving in whatever company. I hope you can get a job, because even with degrees now, there are no jobs. But wherever you're working, if you're an educated person, it might make things better. Or you might try to make things better. We never know,
Yeah.
So,
and I'm glad at the again, Madhubhashini, people like you. I mean, you are someone who holds a PhD, and I'm someone who doesn't have at least A-level qualification. So you are interviewing me means, and exactly as you are, I mean, as in a very sense of your title, Atharamadhyava, you are making this bridge. You are making this bridge, and without, I mean, in a very, I mean, open way. So I'm really glad in Sri Lanka this happens. I mean, without any elitist practice, you have been come to people like us, and we have been learned by your channel. There are many channels.
I still haven't written a film script like you have, but I still haven't. I have not made a film. There are so much, like, in comparison, because I realize in life how little titles mean. And, you get the best example of Professor Sasanka Pereira. You just went and he gave you the book. Some of the greatest people are the simplest. There's nothing except the love of knowledge. Luckily, we got into a situation where they gave a title.
Exactly.
But, it's just people who love knowledge who pursue it. So in the institution, you get that little title. I just got it.
As an example, people like Gananath Obesekar, and how old he is, and still he is working and publishing non-stop. I mean, he is so passionate about his exact study areas.
Yes, Professor Yangoda, so much work being done, and we
are glad to live among them in this kind of a period. Yeah,
I think so, very much so. So, Boopathy, thank you. So let's hope that, especially during the pandemic, your places that you went to might now be available on the internet, because they have libraries online. And there's so much knowledge. And there are philosophers talking on YouTube now. You don't even have to read the lectures. They actually come and give lectures. So even if your English is not good, listen, because you might understand some of it. Now the internet has made the world come to you. Well, as in your child, like youth, you went behind people. Now it has come to you. So if you open your mind and if you realize that this can be done, so much can be learned. And we are all on a journey, both of us are still learning. So thank you for sharing your journey with us. And thank you for coming. I really appreciate, you telling your story here, and let's hope somebody will get inspired by it.
Definitely. And thank you for inviting, and thank you for tolerating. I know my English is not that good, but
I always get totally puzzled. I get so puzzled when people speak like you did, then finish like, so for me, there's absolutely no fault in that.
So, thank you for making me comfortable. Yeah.
So that's all of us should be making everybody comfortable. So that's something. So thank you very much, Boopathy, for your time.
Welcome.
Good night again.
Thank you for inviting.
Okay. Good night.